Hello Gemini, and welcome to your new moon lunar cycle insight video for the cycle beginning with the new moon on the 8th or 9th of October, depending where you are in the world, in Libra, and culminating as we head to the dark moon in Scorpio on the 7th of November. So we know that this is a powerful month of alchemy and change and regeneration as Venus moves through the underworld in Scorpio on her retrograde journey. And we've also got Mercury and the Sun moving into Scorpio during this cycle too. And we will eventually end up with about 5 planets in Scorpio as Jupiter also finishes up his journey there. So it's a time of regeneration, death and rebirth. So I'm going to talk you through the major points of this lunar cycle, the major astrological shifts, and how they will affect you personally as a Gemini or a Gemini rising. So the new moon in Libra will fall in your 5th house, which is a beautiful space of the birth chart, which is very much connected with authentic self-expression. It's connected with joy, with play, creativity, romance, sexuality. It's the Leo ruled house. So it is that space of the birth chart where we just feel the need to allow our inner soul essence to shine out. So normally this would be a beautiful lunation as Libra, the Libra moon and sun come together in this space of your birth chart, kind of awakening new beginnings and new potential and new collaborative creative opportunities, or even new romance opportunities for you during this cycle. But it's really interesting to note that this moon will be in square to Pluto, the ancient, the modern ruler of Scorpio, who has been transiting your 8th house since 2009 and was joined by Saturn there late last year at the winter solstice 2017. So we know that this 8th house area of your birth chart, which is related to the energies of Scorpio, has been undergoing some really deep transformation over the past couple of months, in particular with Saturn being retrograde there. So this brings up this tension between these spaces of your birth chart, and it really echoes the tension that is being created with Venus retrograde as she moves between Scorpio and Libra too. It really highlights, where in our life that we are creating superficial connections, where we're creating surface level interactions with people, and where we are willing to go deep, where we are willing to, really soul bond on an intimate level. So this moon can kind of open the gateway to that. And maybe during this period, some old ways of creating, some old ways of relating, some old ways of expressing yourself will start to come up for review. Perhaps you're going to have to release some of these old patterns to make way for new, more harmonious ways of expressing yourself. And we can also look at how you express yourself in relation to others as well, Gemini. So we can look at how your personal relationships are impacting your ability to be your authentic self in the world, to share your gifts, to share your talents with others. If there is disharmony or chaos in your personal life that is affecting your sense of creative self-expression, now would be the time to really make some changes. Because as we head deeper into the energies of October, we find that these planets begin to gather with Venus and Jupiter in your 6th house of purification. So Mercury enters this space on the 9th of October. The Sun will follow on the 23rd of October. So we can see that this is an area of your chart which is very prominent during this lunar cycle. And the 6th house is the house of Virgo. So it's also connected with Mercury, your ruling planet, and of course he's going to be transiting there. So it's an amplified kind of energy for you, Gemini. And when we're looking at the 6th house, we're looking, as I said, at purification, at detoxification, at letting go of the things that no longer work on a practical, tangible level, letting go of the things that don't support your day-to-day reality flowing in a harmonious way. So it can also be looked at as the house of organization, as the house of foundation building. It's the house of duties, obligations, responsibilities. So as we have this Venus retrograde and this combination of planets here, we might really be looking at where we need to look at the duties and obligations that we have to other people, and where we might need to let go of some responsibility. We need to look at where we are falling into patterns of martyrdom or service and sacrifice, where we find ourselves giving and giving and giving and not receiving. Maybe we need to look at the underlying patterns around why we feel that we need to do that. We may be very drawn to understanding unhelpful, self-sabotaging patterns as we come up to the full moon in Taurus, Gemini. So this is going to be a very transformative and catalytic energy for all of us as we reach the Taurus full moon on the 24th of October, because this will be a moon that creates a space of catharsis for all of the intensity that we've been collectively going under with Venus retrograde. This moon is going to sit in conjunction to Uranus, in opposition to the Sun and Venus in Scorpio, and also squaring the north and south nodes of fate and destiny in Leo and Aquarius. So it's really a point of culmination, a point of crossroads, a point of choice around what we're going to let go of and what we're going to step forward into. And for you, this highlights the polarity of the 6th and 12th house. So we could find that the work that we've been doing since Uranus entered this space of your birth chart in May this year, I think it was around May the 15th, the work that he's been encouraging you to do, liberating yourself from old self-sabotaging belief patterns, liberating yourself from old karmic ties, liberating yourself from the past. All of this can start to come up, and particularly in relation to your service work, to what you're giving to the world, to your day-to-day routines, to the people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, as well as the usual Venus retrograde relationship issues and finance issues. So this can also be where we are giving away our resources on a financial and energetic level, as well as an intimate level. So it's a lunation, and it's a lunar cycle of purification, Gemini. So how can you purify your emotions? How can you purify your heart? Perhaps you'll have to take practical steps to facilitate your healing. So maybe you'll go and see a nutritionist, go and see a herbalist, go and do the Virgo things, because Virgo likes to heal in practical, tangible ways. The 6th house, the Virgo energies are very concerned with very related to the archetype of the priestess, of she who is a clear, pure vessel for the divine to move through. So this can be a time when everything that is not resonating with that starts to come up for release. And this can also be happening very deeply on a mental level as well, because the nodes are currently transiting the ninth, the South Node is in the ninth house of your birth chart, the house of the higher mind. The North Node in Leo is in the third house of your birth chart, the house of mental patterning, the house of Gemini, the house of communication. So perhaps there will be some things that we need to vocalize during this moon as well. Perhaps we're letting go of some old religious or spiritual programming. Perhaps we are redefining how we teach, how we share our gifts with the world if we're somebody that creates courses or teaches or does readings or offerings. So it's a time of really redefining how valuable we feel we are and what has value to us. But definitely we might need time to process around this full moon as it takes house in that subconscious space of our birth chart. We might find that we are having some kind of physical reaction in the body as part of the clearing process as well. So perhaps we might get a winter cold, or perhaps we might find our sensitivities are triggered and we need to just retreat from the world for a while to clear it all away. So it's a very potent moon, and just 2 days after, Venus reaches the heart of her retrograde phase. So what this means is that Venus makes her retrograde conjunction with the Sun. This is the heart of the cycle. This is the moment where she is face to face with her shadows, face to face with the dark goddess, face to face with all of those energies that she has suppressed, she has buried, she's denied, all of those things that we don't want to look at, particularly in Scorpio. You know, perhaps it's working with our relationships and somebody else is going to reflect back to us our habitual behavior patterns that are no longer serving us. Or perhaps it's just feelings that arise from within. So perhaps we are, with the Virgo energy, we're looking at the shadow of the 6th house, which can be self-criticism, unworthiness, you know, that need for perfection that is often unattainable. And also for you, Gemini, because you are a sign that tends to flip from experience to experience, from thought to thought. You know, we never stay focused on anything for very long when we have Gemini placements, unless there's something to counterbalance it. Yet Virgo is all about, and the 6th house is all about focus and discipline. So we could be looking at where we are self-sabotaging ourselves by not being focused enough, by not being disciplined and organized enough in our daily life and in our relationships as well. So we might be, you know, feeling some anxiety or over mental stimulation this month, because this is the house that rules over the nervous system as well as alongside Gemini. So watch out for that hyperstimulation that could occur as well during this period. But really we're working on, how can I let go? How can I shed what is no longer working, particularly in the areas of relationships, resources, day-to-day routines. You know, perhaps some of you will be feeling the need to change your vocation, to change your work during this time. If you know, involved in a more mundane type of work, perhaps you'll be feeling called to do more service work. So it's really looking at what is no longer working and letting it go, and knowing that the rebirth will occur as the cycle shifts, as Venus stations direct in November and kind of goes back over these degrees of Scorpio in December. She actually won't leave the Scorpio, she won't leave the 6th house for you, Gemini, until January of 2019. We've also got Jupiter finishing up his cycle here this month as well, and he's been in this space of your birth chart since last October. So this is a time when the underlying energy that you've been working with Jupiter expanding this house of purification, starts to really reach a culmination point too. And very exciting for you, Gemini, he's going to go into your 7th house next month, your house of relationship, which is generally a nice transit. But we'll talk more about that next month. Okay, so as we approach the end of the month, Gemini, we reach the Celtic festival of Samhain, the end of one year, the beginning of another, here in the Northern Hemisphere. Those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, it's Beltane, the festival of love, of fertility, of sacred sexuality. And it's interesting because both of these festivals, wherever we are in the world, really reflect different aspects of Scorpio. So we can really work with these energies of this season this year in complete alignment with the astrology as well, which is beautiful. So after Samhain, Beltane, Venus is going to, very symbolically, I think that she's shifting on this particular day, is going to head back into Libra. She began her shadow phase at 25 degrees Libra way back in early September. And as she moves back into Libra, she reaches the point in her cycle which is known as the helical rise. And what this means is that Venus now becomes visible on the horizon at dawn again. She is in her morning star phase. She's been reborn. She is beginning a new cycle. And this was the point of the Venus retrograde period that ancient astrologers and astronomers were particularly concerned with. You know, it was seen as a pivotal point because this is the sign that Venus rises in, even though she's still retrograde, is the sign that she begins her next 18-month cycle in. So for collectively, this is Libra. So this is a really beautiful thing because the Venus cycle beginning in her home sign, beginning in the sign of Libra, is significant because it means that we will all be much more focused on coming together in harmony, in cooperation, in equality, the balance of the masculine and feminine, rather than what we've been dealing with the previous 18 months because Venus began her previous cycle in March 2017 in Aries, which of course is the sign of the warrior goddess. And we've seen the fierce feminine rising, we've seen Venus rising, we've had Me Too, we've had Jupiter in Scorpio. All of this very, very necessary rising up of the fire of the goddess. And now she rebirths herself in Libra, which is a very, very different energy, of course, the opposite sign of Aries. So we can see, collectively that many, many people will be coming together, whether it's romantically, in business partnerships, healings of family situations, all kinds of relationship blessings. And for you, Gemini, Venus will make her rise in your 5th house, as I described earlier, that house of Leo, of romance, joy, playfulness, sexuality, and creative, authentic expression. So perhaps after this period, you will find yourself drawing to you people that can support your vision, support your creative endeavors, support you in expressing your authentic self in the world. Perhaps there's a communal project that you can work on that will enhance your creative vision. Perhaps you will just feel a resurfacing of your own innate creative abilities and your own unique expression of self. And of course, this is the house of self-love as well. So this is a really beautiful energy, Libra, sign of partnership, Leo, 5th house, self-love. So it's really that kind of feeling of overflowing with love and being able to share it with other people. So it's a beautiful end to the cycle. And, we will still have more work to do because she will be going back into Scorpio, but in a very different phase. But we'll talk more about that as the cycles unfold. So we come to the, also we have your ruling planet on the same day as Venus rises. Mercury will move into Sagittarius, your opposite sign, your 7th house. So this is where we can really be looking at communication issues with the people in our life. It's a time for us seeing the other person's point of view. When Mercury goes through the 7th house, it's a time for diplomacy and tact. But in Sagittarius, as we know, Mercury can be a little bit more forceful. He's very concerned with his own ideas and opinions about things. And he's actually going to go retrograde here throughout December as well. Well, beginning in November, he's going to, I think it's the 17th, he's going to station retrograde here. So it's important that we look at this energy of Mercury in your 7th house as he shifts in this lunar cycle. So it's really important to look at how much we are actually listening to the other person that we are in connection with, in communication with, in relationship with, and be aware of where we are very deeply rooted in our own ideas and perceptions of things. So that will be something that will unfold and we'll talk about. And we now will be coming to the end of this lunar cycle as we approach the dark moon in Scorpio on the 7th of November, again in that 6th house of your birth chart. So it's time for a new beginning in all of the areas that I talked about earlier in the video, setting intentions for what you wish to call forth in the areas of health, in the areas of work, in the areas of service. And I'm going to close this video, Gemini, by picking a card for you from the Wisdom of Avalon deck by Colette Baron Reid. Interesting. So, very appropriately for Scorpio and that moon squaring your 8th house, the Pluto transit in your 8th house, we have death. So, this, of course, is nothing to be frightened of. This is signifying the death of the old self and the rebirth of the new, which is, of course, the very same thing that Venus is undergoing as she moves through her retrograde. She dies to the old self and she is reborn. So when this card appears in a reading, it signifies the death of the old ways, the death of some aspect of self or life that is no longer serving. And Gemini, we know that you are becoming acquainted with these energies because of these transits that you're having, these long-term transits in the 8th house. So we know that you are familiarizing yourself with these deeper, more shadow, underworld energies anyway, and the Scorpio frequency is going to enhance that. So just be willing to let go. Don't go into fear. Know that everything is continually changing form. Change and death is a natural part of the cycle of life. We are, the cells in our body are constantly dying and regenerating. Everything is part of that natural cycle. And although it can feel very painful to let things go when we're attached to them, that sometimes, well, it's always necessary, even if we can't see the reasoning behind it at the time. So I will leave you with that, Gemini, and if you would like to, you can connect with me further through my Facebook group and pages where I do astrological writing, and you can also reach out to me there for readings if you would like to. I'm sending you so much love for this lunar cycle.